mash that down till it goes off and then comes back. See if that helps. If not, we'll do something else. What we're going to start today and not finish today, we won't finish until Thursday, because I will not be here the next 2 days due to ACT Academy. We are going to start preparing for the quantitative reasoning work on the AP exam, and also things that we will practice and things that will be important to us even if we are not going to be taking the AP exam. Veterans of my sociology class, and I think Zion is the only one, have seen parts of this, but this is a stripped down version because our focus is much narrower for the AP test. But as we think about quantitative reasoning, we need to think first about scientific reasoning. And political science is a science. It is what people refer to often as a soft science as opposed to the hard sciences like physics and chemistry. And like any science, it asks questions about the world. And it develops answers to those questions with theories and hypotheses. And it tests those answers with empirical evidence. And that is the key thing that distinguishes us from, say, political philosophy. Our empirical evidence, meaning real-world evidence, comes in the form of observations, things we see about the real world that we measure and turn into data we can use to test our theories. And so we might have theories that involve whether countries are more or less democratic. And we can make lots of observations, figure out what are important metrics for measuring democraticness, and then we can convert those into usable data. Maybe it's a scale from 0 to 100. Usually it's more as like a coefficient where it would be 0 to 1. And that way we can test our answers in systematic ways. What's important here is it is not enough to have a logical and persuasive argument. That certainly is important. An illogical theory would be probably also impossible to test with empirical evidence. But the reason we make this distinction, if we think back to Montesquieu or Madison and Brutus I, these people making arguments. Their arguments are, or Locke, their arguments are primarily based on logic. They make certain assumptions about the state of nature, the laws of nature, and from those assumptions, they generate arguments. Montesquieu and Madison and Brutus go a little bit beyond that. They're trying to use evidence. And it's not really their fault that they're not using more. There just really isn't a lot. But they compare, for example, small republics versus large republics and draw conclusions about the benefits and drawbacks of both. So they're getting more towards scientific thinking. But we have to have observations and data, and we need to use the scientific method. Now, we're going to kind of use scientific method light in this class. So the first thing is to ask a question. I realize as we go through this, a lot of you have not actually been taught anything about the scientific method since maybe middle school, and maybe not since elementary school. I mean, you've done science, but it's been a while since somebody taught you the steps. And in some ways, this is going to be probably simpler than what you got the first time around. First up, we have to ask a question, which means we need to be curious. It is helpful to be curious in life. Okay, to ask questions about things. In this class, even if you are not naturally curious, you are at least motivated by the grade to ask questions and try to answer them. In political science, we ask lots of different kinds of questions, but two key examples: origins of institutions. Why does France have a semi-presidential system? Why do post-Soviet republics tend to adopt semi-presidential systems too? Some want to know what causes policy. And why do some governments spend more on health care than others? Why does Japan spend so much on infrastructure? Like, why do they build so much infrastructure? And we also want to know the effects of institutions and policies. Talking about how democratic or undemocratic institutions are, and a lot of political scientists have argued for decades back and forth about whether there's something special in democracy that makes democracies more peaceful as countries. And some argue that there's something about democratic institutions that does make democratic states more peaceful. Others point out they go to war just as often as non-democracies, but they seem for some reason not to fight each other. So we want to try and understand the effects. And effects of policies like the United States and its new tariff policies. What are those going to do? Our example is not going to be anything so grand. Our poli-sci question is this: why are Missouri roads often so bad, or so often bad? And that is an actual picture of a Missouri two-lane blacktop. If you've driven much on two-lane blacktops, you maybe didn't need that picture. And if sounds like I'm picking on Missouri roads, it turns out they're actually, believe it or not, a lot better than they used to be. I see a lot less of this now than I did when I started driving. And so one of those questions will be, are Missouri roads really so bad? That might be something we have to circle back to. Kind of like the question, why are democracies more peaceful? Well, are they really more peaceful? But for now, we're going to assume that there are problems with Missouri roads. We want to know why, so our second step is to answer the question. And to answer our question, we develop a theory. Theories are two things. Theories are answers, and theories are cause and effect stories. That is it. There is nothing mystical or magical, and there shouldn't be anything terrifying about theories. They're just cause and effect stories. What is one of your theories for the condition of Missouri roads? This is our first Pear Deck question. And guys, don't make this overcomplicated. I want you to give me one answer for why Missouri roads might be bad. And that's it. Not multiple answers, just an answer. let's look at some of our responses. And there's actually a pretty large number because a lot of you guys had good theories. Now, if yours isn't up here, it does not mean you had a bad theory. I'm focusing on these partly because of how they're written. So, theories in political science are praised for being elegant. Right? Now, elegant has nothing to do with the cut of a dress or how many sequins are on it. Elegance refers to simplicity, being as simple as it can be in answering the question. This is a simple answer. Missouri roads are bad because our roads don't get reconstructed as much as other states. Missouri roads are bad because of tax money being put to other things. And Missouri roads are bad because, so we have a condition and a cause. An effect of Missouri roads being very bad and a cause. So the way we phrase these things can be important. We want to make sure that we have the effect and the cause in the same statement. Or in this case, two sentences, but it does the same thing. Missouri doesn't have toll roads or taxes like Kansas, therefore there isn't as much money to fund road repairs. Okay, so keep your theory in mind. Our next thing is we need to think about the variables that have made up our theory. As I said, theories are just cause and effect stories. And in those stories, the variables are the characters. And variables, put simply, are things that vary. There are three main types. I suspect we will only deal with the first two. We have dependent variables, which we usually refer to as Y, partly because in a graphical display of a relationship between variables, the dependent variable is usually on the Y-axis that runs horizontally. And it is, X is the thing that we want to display horizontally. Y is generally displayed vertically. I don't know where I was going with that. So it is the thing we want to explain. In this case, in our question, the quality of roads. Okay, now notice how I have written that. It's not an accident. The quality of roads. I didn't say bad roads. I didn't say good roads. Once we've thought about our theory, we need to state our variables such that they can vary. If we just say bad roads, we've already assigned a value to our dependent variable. We don't want to do that. As we want to talk about the quality of roads. It is also the effect. Independent variables, or our X, it is the cause or the causes of the effect we see in our dependent variable. Yeah, since I botched that the first time, now we've got both of them up there in a graphical display, where you've got kind of a box at a 90-degree angle. The line that runs left to right, the horizontal line, that will display values of your independent variable. Variables, or values of your dependent variable, Y, will be represented as a vertical line. And then you'll plot where values of your dependent variable match up to values of your independent variable. The third type, again, I don't think we'll deal with them, but just to be safe and just also so you can understand how messy the social world is, we have intervening variables. These, as you might guess, are caught between the independent and dependent variables. They have an effect on the dependent variable, but they are also affected by independent variables. So thinking about this in something that is not roads or political science, Your question might be, why is Dr. Brown so short? Okay. Well, the dependent variable you are concerned with is not short. The dependent variable you are concerned with is the height of Dr. Brown, or the height of people. Your independent variable would be the things that cause me to be short. Think about our example. So 1, what is our dependent variable? And remember, be careful. You want to state it as something that can vary. And then, this part, thinking solely of your theory, what is the independent variable you suggested? And again, you want to state that variable as something that can vary. You don't want to assign a value to it at this point. Okay, I'm going to go to this one first. That is the simplest statement, and it is also perfectly fine. And the dependent variable is the quality of the roads. Notice the person has not said bad quality of roads or good quality of roads, just quality of roads. And the independent variable is funding, not lack of funding, not low funding, but funding, because it can be low or it can be high. Okay, we need to state our variables such that they can actually vary. Okay, so same thing here. Yes. Budget and quality of the roads. For this, right, the use of the roads, so different independent variable, which obviously would be measured with different things, but both of these are similar. And we might want to think about that differently. We might not care so much about the cars that are on the road. We might want to know how many heavy trucks are on the road. And then this kind of gets back to that spending and quality. You've got your theory, you've got your variable, now you need your hypothesis. In this case, we're just one hypothesis. I do want to say that if you take more political science classes, your hypothesis is not an educated guess, despite what you've been told your entire lives since you first heard the word hypothesis. It's not. It's not an educated guess. You've developed a theory, which if you're doing this for real means you've read lots of literature related to your theory and your question. You've thought about your variables. You've thought about how you're going to measure them. You've defined them clearly. You're not guessing by the time you get to this stage. Now, for this class, a lot of this you are going to be winging it. So you need to think about the relationship you expect to see between your variables. Which is the correlation between your x and your y. And correlation is just correlation, how two things are related, how changes in one relate to changes in the other. And you're going to state it differently than you would state your theory. Because your theory, and for some of you this was very much your theory, Missouri roads are bad because we don't spend enough money on them. That's fine for a theory. Your hypothesis needs to be different. The classic hypothetical statement format is an if-then. If states spend more money on roads, then roads will be better or higher quality. But, especially in the social sciences, strong if-then statements don't really work for us. The world we work with is too messy. We're studying people, not subatomic particles. And so we have probabilistic statements. So we might say the more money a state spends on its roads, the more likely its roads will be higher quality. Or, if you want to be really fancy, instead of saying the more X, the more likely Y, you can stick to your if-then, and you can tack some Latin onto the end of it. Right? The ceteris paribus clause. And ceteris paribus just means all other things being equal. This is one of those times when using the Latin is shorter than using the English. So that's why we do it. So you would say, if a state spends more money on its roads, then its roads will be higher quality, ceteris paribus, all other things being equal. Because as some of you pointed out in theories, like part of the reason Missouri might have bad roads is because we have weather that is really hard on roads. We have heat indexes that go over 100. We have temperatures that fall substantially below 0 degrees Fahrenheit. We have lots of rain. We have freezing followed by weather like this, right, that causes all kinds of problems for roads. And so obviously not all of things are created equal. Roads in Georgia don't really have to worry about deep freezes. At the same time, Missouri roads don't really have to worry about mudslides, earthquakes, and wildfires quite as much as California roads. So with those things in mind, thinking about how you should write your hypothesis, write a hypothesis. Okay, so we have the if-then, right? If there are more heavily loaded or heavy loaded trucks on roads, the roads will be bad. If the state of Missouri rebuilds their roads more often, then the roads will be in better condition, right? All other things being equal. Another if-then. This, I know I cut somebody off, but I can see where they were going with this, right? The more we raise in tolls and taxes, the more revenue will be generated, and the more we will be able to spend on making the roads better. And then, of course, this combining all that, if funding increases, then the quality of roads will also increase, all other things being equal. That's what hypothetical statements should look like. And so, I mean, when you're seeing graphically displayed data from assignments or the AP exam, start thinking about it in those ways. Then you need to find the best answer. And since some of you, I mean, you've come up with competing theories to explain the conditions of our roads, right, we need to know which of those is correct. And that's where the evidence comes in. The main types, especially in terms of what we will be considering, your choices could be quantitative or statistics. Primarily, I mean, quantitative can be some other things, like game theory, we're not going down that road. Or qualitative, which is detailed comparison. And qualitative was what Montesquieu had to go on to compare small and large republics. Obviously, our focus is going to be on quantitative evidence. In the AP exam, or even an exam in this classroom, nobody is going to drop down on you a detailed history of the Roman Empire or the Roman Republic and the city-state of Genoa, for you to compare the virtues or vices of small and large republics. Give you stats. This is when I'll make my pitch. Last week we had the counselors in here advising you that some of you need to make sure you take a math class all 4 years. Whether that's you or not, I would encourage everyone to take a stats class, either here or in college, because being able to understand statistics is going to be valuable in lots of things that you do and just in life in general. I mean, Mark Twain famously said there's lies, damn lies, in statistics. And you can't tell if statistics are really lying to you unless you understand them. Quantitative evidence. One type is descriptive statistics. These are the simplest form. They would be things like the mean and the median and the mode and standard deviation. If you were in my sociology class, we'd go through these in more detail, but we don't need to here because the stuff that we need for AP, and therefore the stuff I'm going to emphasize with you, is not that sophisticated. This is essentially the kind of thing that you are going to see in AP data, where you're really just getting a dependent variable. Yes, there is an x-axis. Yes, there is a y-axis, but the y-axis is just, or the x-axis is just time, which is not an independent variable here. We only have a dependent variable, percentage of roads in good condition. And we can see over time that it has gone up. Roads are not getting better because they are older. That's not how roads work. Roads get older, they tend to get worse. So time is not our independent variable. If you think back to the example in the Heimler history video introducing the quantitative data part of the AP exam, you saw in that example 4 pie charts. And those pie charts were only, they were kind of talking about independent and dependent variables. Share of the vote, share of the seats. A share of the vote being the independent variable, share of the seats being the dependent variable. But that's it. Right? That's the only kind of display that you got. Those are descriptive statistics. Now, the other thing that you would learn in a stats class, and I think is a reason to take it, is inferential statistics, which are, there are different ways of displaying correlation between variables. Correlation, again, it's just how two or more things vary together. So for this example that I do use in my sociology classes, it's not about roads. Here we have a real independent variable on the x-axis and a real dependent variable on the y-axis. We're looking at the relationship between money and happiness. The more money, the happier you are to a point, and then it kind of levels off. That helps us understand that relationship. And that is what I prefer much more than the data you're likely to see in AP. But nonetheless, we'll prepare for the test you have to take. So I know that sounds like a teacher saying he's going to teach to the test, and I am, because some of you are paying good money to take it, and you want it to go well. And I want it to go well. Zion, is it fair to characterize this as scientific method light compared to what you got? Yeah, okay. No, we skipped operationalization, which is too bad because it's, I'm not going to say it's fun, but important. But for us, this is where we're going to stop today, especially. We will pick this back up on Thursday. You guys are going to have 2 days with a sub. I know you're real broke up about that. If you need to, if you're feeling particularly weepy, there's a box of tissues back here on my desk. Otherwise, in our roughly 15 minutes that are remaining, I would like you to continue working on those notes that technically should have been complete at the start of the school day today. But again, I want to make sure, more than usual, don't get used to this, that you have time to work on those notes in class. Because it's not always clear what you need to write. Some fifth-hour students, the quiz you guys took last Friday, and they're like, I did not know I was supposed to write about the seniority rule and committee chairs. I had no clue. I get that, right? And usually for this stuff, like, the history is not going to be as important. Right? Same with the power of the speaker over time. But for us, those things matter because you may see things about what's going on with Republican speakers of the House lately. They're not as powerful as they should be because they don't have strong support from their own party. It's very easy for them to lose that support. That helps you understand what's going on right now. If you guys were to see on the AP exam a line that looked like this, describing the number of bills coming out of committees since 1960. That line might look like that. You might need to know that the reason few bills used to come out of committees was because of those powerful committee chairs who had seniority, who could essentially, if they just didn't like a bill, they could just sit on it and never let it out of committee. Those two things matter. Most of the time, I'm going to try and limit how much history creeps into the course at this point. All right, now I'll shut up and let you guys do something.